Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. So, welcome again. Good morning to all of you. I heard it was a long night for some of you, so thanks especially for joining the talk. Maybe I should introduce myself in the first place. So, my name is Markus Orthaber. I'm a senior lecturer at the Universität leoben at the Institute of Mechanics. And I'm involved in blended learning and thinking about the depths of teaching, so to say, since like 2015. So quite early on, I started experimenting with a lot of things. And what I want to share with you today is basically my experiences over the last 6 years, let's say. So the global virtual classroom, I thought about that quite a lot, and what comes to my mind when I think about the global virtual classroom. But before telling you what comes to my mind, I might ask you to tell me what comes to your mind. So I would invite you to join this feedbacker session that you can either join with the QR code. I hope you can fully see it, I'm not sure. With the link down below. So please just join on your smartphones or whatever device you've got in front of you and tell us, what do you think when you hear about global virtual classroom? That would be interesting for me. Okay, so let's go through a few of them. I've got here online way of teaching, modern concept, great opportunities. I agree with that. Conferencing, okay. An arena for collaboration, that's great. And something more than just common online sessions, maybe VR meeting, yeah. That will be on my second to last slide. Digital learning, multicultural community. That's an important one for me, multicultural. And yeah, so online classroom worldwide. Okay, great. Thank you for joining. Now, I agree with a lot of that. Let me tell you what came to my mind when I thought about it. And that's some properties, actually. So not really the techniques or the tools we are using or how we do something, but rather what we want to achieve from a didactical point of view. And that's, in my opinion, it should be motivational and activating. It should also be collaborative, as you already mentioned. It should be inclusive. That's including impaired people, and that's also including people from remote places and a multicultural community, as you stated. And it should be seamless in the sense that it doesn't matter which device you are using to join a session, you should be able to do so, for example. And what's very important when it comes to feedback and things like that, that should be immediate as possible. I will come to that later on. Okay, so that's what I was thinking. And when I think about that, the main term that comes to my mind is a subset of blended learning, and that's called flipped classroom. And you probably know that. And in the ongoing talk, I'm going to describe and tell you how I'm using the flipped classroom approach and how I think that can be, or has been by me already in parts at least, incorporated into a virtual classroom setting. So maybe just a few words about the flipped classroom itself. I borrowed that slide from an Erasmus Plus project, the PolyFlip project, where we do exactly that, flipping courses and then researching what changes for the students, what changes for the teachers, and so on. So an important thing is to think about what is flipping the classroom. And there are mainly 4 pillars that you have to take into account. That's a flexible environment. You have to have an environment, a learning management system that's flexible enough to do anything you want, basically. Then you have to have the right learning culture. So not only for the students or from the student side, but also from the institution, the department, your own university. It has to be backed by all participants. Then it's very important when it comes to the lesson content that the content is intentional, that you don't just use any lecture that you have and that you gave in a face-to-face meeting before that flipping scenario, and then you just take the contents and flip that. That probably wouldn't work. You have to think about the content once again. You have to think about things like learning paths, and then intentionally input your content into the course and see what can be flipped, what can not be flipped, what has to be done synchronous, and so on. And of course, what's often overlooked is you yourself as teachers, or me as a teacher. We have to be professionalized. So we have to have courses teaching the teachers to really engage in a flipped classroom setting. That's also important. So let's see how I incorporated all this. And we're talking about an exercise course on engineering mechanics here. So that's my example course. I've got others, but that one is the most elaborate at the moment, and that's why I'm showing you that one. And it's basically the basics of engineering mechanics. Second semester at the Universität Leoben, where they come into contact with mechanics for the first time, probably. And there are connected with these pillars, I have to say, sometimes or often even the pillars are intertwined, so I cannot really constrain it to one single pillar that we just saw, but it's rather a mixture of all four probably. But I nevertheless tried to mention the main pillar, in my opinion, in the heading. So the context, the learning management system. There are two main things when it comes to the learning management system and the course itself. The students, even before coming to class, they have to know what the course is all about and how it works. So you cannot just say, oh, we'll flip and then come to the class and we'll discuss everything there. That's not working quite well in my point of view. You have to inform them before they even come to the class. Maybe when it's not a mandatory course, even before they decide to do the course even. So a sort of a pitch of your course and yourself, and what is the content and how does the course work. That's what I do here, and I'm doing that. And I'm sorry that here that's in German. I didn't translate everything as the course is in German, but I will describe the main and important parts. What I do is I'm doing an introductory video and also an introductory text. And this text is the only text that the students would also get via mail as a PDF, because I cannot be sure that everyone is able to log into the learning management system, for example. And then they would get this text 2 weeks before the course starts, let's say, and there I describe how they can log into the learning management system, how the course works, and so on. And hopefully then most of the students will be able to log in and see how the course really looks like and start their first tasks. But as we know, to be inclusive, you have to have several media, not only written probably, but also video. And I'm always doing these short video pitches. and I recorded one for this talk actually in English so that you can see how that would look like. Normally it's in German, of course, but I recorded one in English yesterday, and I will show you what I mean by pitch. Hi, and welcome to this course on engineering mechanics. My name is Markus Orthaber, and I'm a senior lecturer at the Institute of Mechanics at the Montanuniversität Leoben. In this course, we will cover the basics of engineering mechanics, namely statics and some basics of mechanics of materials. The course is using the learning management system Moodle and is structured in such a way that it encourages your active participation. There will be a theory wrap-up in every section, pre-assigned example problems for you to solve on your own or in groups, and in the end a mastery test, making sure that you understood the example problems and the underlying theory. In class, we will then discuss any ambiguities that you might have had with the example problems and try to solve problems in the understanding of the theory. Building on that, I will provide further, more complicated example problems for you to solve in groups, with me acting as your guide. Your first task will be to introduce yourselves in the Moodle forum and at least answer one post of one of your colleagues. Please make sure to finish this task before the first class so that we can build on that in class. I'm sure we will have a great time together, and I'm very much looking forward to meeting you personally. Above all, don't forget to have fun with mechanics, and see you soon. Okay, so you probably know a lot about my course now. Just in 1.5 minutes, you know how the course is structured, what you have to do before coming to class. But most importantly, you get to know me as a teacher. And you can already, even in a virtual setting, I would say you can already connect a little bit on a personal level to who I am as a teacher, how I look like, how I behave, and things like that. And that's very important for me. That's the social component of learning is a very important one. And what I just want to point out is, in my opinion, be positive. Always be positive about what you say and show your enthusiasm. You probably have a lot of enthusiasm for your topic, and I'd urge you to show that. And what's also important is to have some contact information in this video so that students seeing the video not inside of the learning management system, but probably as a link that I sent to them, will know how to contact me. That's normally not my email address in that setting. I just use that as for now, as a demonstrational thing. But I would rather use a Slack group, for example, or preferably even the Moodle forums. Okay, so that would be the first thing. And what I told them is, please introduce yourself in the welcome forum on Moodle. What that does is the students get to know the learning management system. They at least log in one time. They know what the login credentials are, and they are prepared to use Moodle. Even though they might know Moodle, they might still not be able to find your specific course. So by doing something like that, you make sure that everyone tries to log in maybe 2 weeks, 1 week before the first class starts, and that everyone is prepared to use the learning management system when it comes to using it in class and then for the flipped parts. And of course, I erased all the names here, but you can see that I make this welcome post mandatory. So I'm setting Moodle in a way that the other content is only shown if there is one post and one answer to a post of a colleague from a specific student. You can set everything in Moodle to do that automatically. And then, of course, they have to introduce themselves. And that's if you look up, for example, Gilly Salmon, the expert on e-moderation, then that's a very important outcome of her research, that you have to do something like that, small tasks to get acquainted with the learning management system. It's very important in a virtual setting, but it's also important in a blended setting where you meet your students in the lecture hall for the face-to-face classes. And then I'm building on that, and they know, because I told them in the introductory video that I'm building on that. And when they come to the class, be it online or in the lecture hall, they get one of the colleagues they have replied to in the Moodle forums, and they have to introduce her or him to the others. So that's like doing a in-class partner interview. That's the virtual version of that. So they have to really think about the post that they are answering, because they might suspect that there's coming something like that. Okay, and if they didn't, they have to reiterate the post. Then what's also important in a context perspective and a learning culture perspective is that you have a clear structure, a clear learning path. And I took the third week here. That would be the outline of 1 week, one topic in my Moodle course, where everything is structured in a learning path kind of way. So as I mentioned in the intro video, the students get a theory wrap up, because I cannot expect them to be in the lecture all the time. So they might not know certain things that are important for the example problems to solve them. So they got a theory wrap up as a wiki, and they are also asked to contribute to the wiki. So everyone can put their things into the wiki, and of course I can see who put what, so they cannot put just anything, but they should put some further information they found somewhere else, including the citations and so on. So that's also a collaborative part. Then, to be really inclusive, they have a PDF to download where all the example problems are on in a PDF form, and they can even print it out. So if they like to work on paper and not on the screen or on a tablet or something like that, they can print it out. That's also important for me. Or maybe they are in a remote area. When we talk about a global virtual classroom, there are a lot of remote areas where you don't have internet access. So then they can download everything, can work on it in their remote areas, and come back with it to a locality where they've got internet. And then there are tasks to do. And yeah, I will talk about that a little later. Maybe just the course structure. So not the course, the course structure. It's that you have a task, and you have to solve that task in groups, preferably, and upload the solution to this Moodle task. And as soon as you uploaded your solution, you get immediate feedback in the form of a screencast, a solution that I once worked out and recorded as a screencast. That's also extremely important when you look into didactical e-didactics research, that you get high quality immediate feedback on your tasks. That helps with motivation, and that also helps with the learning outcomes. And then there is a test, a mastery quiz at the end, to make sure that the students know at least the basics. And everything else we will cover in the next slides. So I'll just quickly show you how the wiki would, for example, look like. Maybe just one remark when talking about being inclusive. Down here are 2 pictures. And if you do something like that, please also think about impaired students. So for example, blind students that need to use a screen reader. For those students, you'd have to really describe these pictures, because otherwise pictures would just be non-existent for the screen reader. Or at least the screen reader knows there is a picture, but he doesn't know what's in there. So that's also an important thing. If you're building your course from scratch, think about these things too. Yeah, and then there's a pre-class problem. I picked that one out as an example problem. That would be vectorial statics. And they have to solve it. And then if they uploaded it, they get an embedded or a link to a screencast. And I'll show you how that looks like.
5 in y-Richtung und minus 15 und daraus kriegst du die Wurzel 350. Und das gleiche für...
This is recorded directly in class, so in the lecture hall. And the only thing that I do is I'll add subtitles, and I also add subtitles in English so that, so that the students that don't have German as their mother tongue or first language also are able to follow what I'm doing. Because the screencasts themselves are all in German, and then at least you've got the subtitles in English. That's a little bit of work. It's better now than it was 5 years ago, but it's still some work to correct all these subtitles. But it pays off, I would say. And yeah, and then they've got the mastery test, and they fill in what they calculated on paper or on their tablets or wherever they did it. The only thing is the quiz changes a little bit for every student. They get random numbers here for the forces, for example, and for the dimensions, for the angle, so that they just cannot copy what their colleagues did, but have their own numbers. Of course, they can copy the equations that they calculated, but yeah, they still have to put in their numbers and calculate things. So I at least hope that they do a bit with the problem and not just putting numbers in. But that's, of course, something we could discuss hours on end, how to really prevent from just copying things and really doing active work. That's what I want them to do, actually. And this mastery quiz also contains some theory, some small theory questions that also change. There's a pool of theory questions, and by chance they get a few, say 3 or 4 theory questions for every mastery quiz, so that I can make sure that they are at least acquainted with the most important concepts before coming to class. So they know what a force is, they know what a vector is, and things like that. So really the basics that you can build on that. Okay, and even more importantly, I, as a teacher or as a guide in the course, I can draw my conclusions from these mastery quizzes before going to class. That's a very big thing for me, because I can, for example, see, okay, example problem 21 here, they had a little bit of problems, because a lot of students weren't able to work that out correctly. So I can go back to that problem. I can present the problem in class again. I can talk about how it's calculated, and I can also talk about the theory that's connected with it once again, wrap that up again. And doing that, the students really feel to have that their time is valued in class. So there is not just a reiteration of what they already did before class, but there's really some added value to going to the class, no matter if it's face-to-face or online. I'm doing that anyway, and that's also very important when someone tells you, I don't want to do that kind of things because I record everything once and then no one comes to class anymore. Yes, that's true if you just go on and on year after year with the same stuff. But if you really use your time in class for added value, then that's absolutely not true. Okay, so the classroom content is adaptive. There is, it depends on what the asynchronous flipped part had, depending on the outcomes, what was a problem, what everyone understood. For example, I wouldn't discuss anymore, to put it in a different way. And what I also do, and that's also important now in a virtual setting, I always used group work in the classrooms. So maybe we would discuss one basic concept that 90% didn't understand. And then we would build groups, and they would do example problems, even either the ones that they didn't understand before class or more complex ones. I'll come to that in a minute. And they would form groups. And now with the online and virtual synchronous meetings, I also did that with the Zoom meetings. I just split them up in breakout rooms. They decide on groups beforehand, and then I prepare all the breakout rooms, and they would be in breakout rooms discussing their problems, their example problems, their problems with the theory, and so on. And the feedback on that is overwhelmingly positive from the students' perspective, because they not only have the ability to really collaborate online. The students told me they learned a lot about collaborative whiteboards and things like that as a side effect. They also have the added value of being able to discuss. And then I am here as a guide, and I can switch rooms. They can ask for help, of course, in Zoom, and I will go to their room and help them, or I will switch rooms actively and see what they're doing, ask them if everything's clear, describe how things that aren't clear would work, and so on. And what I found out, interestingly, is they are working harder online than they are doing in class. And the reason is quite simple. The reason is they don't know when I will come to their room. In class, they know when I walk up to them, they know, okay, now the professor is coming and I need to do something. But in Zoom, they don't know when I'll be there. So I could be there immediately, and then they really work on their problems. That's probably, yeah, some pressure, but it motivates them at least. Yeah, and for the students that already know everything that they did on their own, there are more complicated example problems or other example problems to foster their knowledge in class. So that's also added value for them. And they can choose. And of course, there are worked out solutions for all these example problems too that they get after the class. Not only screencasts, but also PDFs to download with worked out solutions. Okay, that's it about the class. I just wanted to mention two other things. I'm already over time, I'm sorry. One thing that's very important for me now in the last 1.5 years is virtual consultation hours. I started doing that with the strike of Corona. I just set up a Zoom link in my vCard in our campus management system. And every week, Tuesday and Thursday from 8 to 10, this meeting is open and the students know the link and they can just join it. And then it would be like knocking on my door in the office, and they're just there and can discuss their problems with me or ask their questions. That's also very important for most of the students, as they told me, because as we just talked before my talk, they may sit in some remote locations abroad and they don't have the ability to come to the university to talk to me. Now they have the ability to do it virtually. And I always have my iPad connected and a virtual whiteboard on that one, so I can describe all the things and write down everything just as I would do on the whiteboard in the office. And another thing that we could talk for maybe days or weeks is what's about summative assessments. So assessments in the end of a course, e-assessments, how would you do that in a global virtual setting? And we also did that on the Institute. We had like 1,500 e-assessments already since March of 2020. And they also work out well, but you really have to know what to do. So that's not really the scope of my talk. I just wanted to mention that's another topic to be aware of. And of course, I didn't talk about tools, but there are a few tools that I'm using. You know by now, Moodle is my central hub at the core of all the courses. Everything's connected there. And for the in-class appointments, I'm using Explain Everything. If it's in an online, no, not only in an online, also in a face-to-face setting, I'm using the iPad and Explain Everything. That's basically a virtual whiteboard that can also record the screen, as you saw in the YouTube video before, and they can be connected to a projector or to the Zoom meeting and then just act as a whiteboard. And what I started to experiment with now, what came before, is virtual reality. Not only virtual reality, but also augmented reality, building models of some mechanics problems in virtual reality. For example, you could let the students, that would be a high-level one, you could let the students build a bridge out of trusses and make them in charge of that the bridge is not collapsing if a train is passing through, for example. And yeah, I'm only at the start of that, but there's a lot of possibilities here. So let me end here. And thank you very much. I would really welcome questions if there's time or remarks.
Thank you, Markus Orthaber, for the very inspiring presentation about digital tools. I'm also, in this sense, still learning about what is possible. Maybe from the audience, is there maybe some feedback to Markus Orthaber in this sense at the moment? Otherwise, maybe I have a question. When did you maybe specifically start with your more intense dealing with the online and learning tools you presented here? Was it COVID itself or was it earlier?
No, it was before. I was quite lucky to have everything in place in March 2020. So I already did it, like 2 years before COVID. I flipped my class. I started flipping the classes in 2015 already. Okay. And it built step by step. That's also very important if you ask me. Don't do everything at once, but start building in small steps. And then it grows. And now it looks quite elaborate and complicated, but it really grew over the years. Yeah.
Yes, it's really inspiring what you presented. I think it's really a coherent concept of dealing with also especially technical lectures. And I would like to, maybe if it's okay for you, to suggest to the EURECA-PRO audience, or let's say also the Education Council, to really look at specifically your tools, maybe that we in the next months go ahead with our discussions. How can we organize ourselves? We make a big reference to you and your experience.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's very nice. Yeah.